Hello and welcome to Video Revealed. I'm Colin Smith and this is your place for professional video production techniques. The subject of this reveal, Pro DSLR color settings before you shoot. Alright, so we're talking about a digital single lens reflex camera, a DSLR camera, but now we can start to talk about really any cameras, even mirrorless, that are shooting the same kinds of files, 8-bit AVC HD files. And I made a specific point of saying before you shoot, because you can't change this after the shoot. So you need to set your cameras up correctly. And cameras, all these cameras, whether it's from Canon, Nikon, Sony, Olympus, whatever, they've got ways of tweaking the settings. Now, you should never trust this damn thing on the back because manufacturers want to make their cameras look great to users. So they turn up the contrast, they turn up the saturation, they want a big bold image, and that's what you're recording if you leave it on the standard settings. If you go in and try to find on your camera, I'll show you here on the EOS utility for Canon, the settings that I have in here, which are basically, well, let's go have a look. Picture style that I'm using is this picture style, which is the user-defined one, so it's not one of the standard ones. And I'm turning down the contrast and the sharpening and then saturation -2. So my settings are 0, -4, -2, 0. And these are the settings that pretty much everyone that uses a Canon sets up. Several years ago, I had the opportunity of attending one and only boot camp put on by Hurlbut, who's an American cinematographer, and it was about transitioning to using a DSLR, the good and the bad, and what you have to watch out for. And these kinds of settings are used by, you'll find you don't need me to show you all of these loading settings. Just search for Technicolor CineStyle, which you can get also for Nikon. Vincent Laforet also has, and I'll put some links in the description. John Carr also has some information, and Shane Hurlbut. I mean, these guys, they've shot on a ton of different cameras. They're not just DSLR shooters, they're professionals. But they've really done a lot of research in making sure that it's they get the most out of the DSLR. It's 8-bit, it's highly compressed. It blows things out really, really easy. It's got the 5D Mark III has an amazing dynamic range, but you want to shoot with less dynamic range so that you can expand it later on. And I'll show you an example of when that's blown out. And converting this to ProRes does not work. Some people will say, well, if I just take the H.264, no. All that does is make a giant file. It can't add more color. It's 8-bit. You got to be careful, and you got to make sure the camera is set up properly. So let's have a look. So as I said, in here, these are the settings that I'm using, and we're going to look at two different examples. So inside Premiere Pro, when you're in your editing workspace, if you go to the color workspace, and if your scopes aren't showing on the left, go to the window menu and turn on Lumetri scopes right here. And you can turn on the scopes that you want. All 4 of these are on by default. I'm going to go to my presets and choose these vector scope, the parade, and the waveform. And what you're looking at is the information in this file. And when you look at a scope that shows this, you can see that it's almost all the way down to 0 and way past 100. And look over here on the right-hand side, you can definitely see there's some detail in the side of the house, but there's definitely no detail in the sky. This is so typical of DSLR cameras that have just blown out the sky. Now, this could very well be an overcast sky with no clouds at all, but if you are already blown out at this level, the default level, and you're getting sky, and it's, let's say, bright clouds against a blue sky, those clouds are just going to be big white blobs. I'll show you an example of pulling that stuff back from clouds in a second. And the other thing is, by default, this is going to be looking at the scopes are in 8-bit mode. If you go to 32-bit floating mode, you're going to get more information, but it's also going to require a bit of more computing power. The clamp signal will show you when you're going beyond 0 and beyond 100 because this is already compressed. And if we look at this, you can see we're already clipped it at 100 and not so much on 0. And also the flag if we roll back to the beginning, you can see the red in the flag where it's mostly showing is already oversaturated here in the vector scope. Okay. And more importantly, let's go look at, if I pulled back that information. So there is the sky. Let's try to just bring the exposure down. And when you bring the exposure down, you're bringing all of the exposure down. That's not going to help. So if we look at our highlights, pull those down, and our whites, and pull those down. Now let's go look. You can see we've brought no information back. In fact, look at these artifacts that are showing up. And they're showing up because there's not enough information between all of those blends. 8-bit means there's only 256 colors between each one of the values in red, green, and blue to give you a 24-bit image. And look over here at the scopes. These lines in here are telling us we've lost information. That is typical. When we brought back the highlights and we're stretching it out, you're now exposing more of those missing pieces. 8-bit is just going to always throw away information. Let's go look at something that was shot with a better setting. So, and now this image is by no means as dark. There's not a lot of darks in here, but it's still representative of how much you can pull back. So even when I'm up into the clouds, I'm still, the only thing that I'm blowing out is this spot in here, which is the sun coming through. Now, this is me on the streets of Charleston with my 5D Mark III just pointing up and shooting around, and no light meter, no setting, and I got this pretty dramatic shot. Now if we start to pull highlights back, whites back, look at that. We're pulling all of that information into the sky, and we can turn the contrast up, maybe push some of this into the shadows and the blacks. We went from that to that, and we've got more definition in the sky. Now let's go look at our scopes. We still see some of those lines in here, but not as many lines. And now I'm pushing this up to the top and almost in the bottom. If I turn the Lumetri setting off and on, you can see the scopes where they were and where they are now. So that extra latitude allows me to play with this. I mean, I made this dark and dramatic. I could easily have bumped the saturation up even more than what the camera normally would have, and then make this a bright, happy scene with big blue skies and puffy clouds. Let's go have a look at something that's very representative of good latitude, and that's an ARRI RAW file. So this is a giant ARRI RAW file. Let's pop this up and look at the scopes. Look at how much information is in there. It is incredible what's in there. Now this is shot as a log C file. So on that camera, there is a setting in there to shoot log C, and everything is milky and white, and then you shoot and you expose it to be within that range. And I could push this to darks, to evil, to happy, to wherever I want. Now, I'm not going to say that if you have the right settings in a DSLR, you're going to get an ARRI camera. You're not. But that should be your mindset. You should think about the limitations of this camera. As Shane Hurlbut trained all of us at the boot camp, there are limitations, but when you're within those limitations, you light correctly, you shoot correctly, then you're going to get the absolute benefits out of that. All right. Well, hopefully you found this informative. If you have, then please subscribe to Video Revealed. If you're not already an Adobe Creative Cloud user, there's a link in the description just for you to get your free 30-day trial. Till next time, I'm Colin Smith, and it's my job to get you looking your best.